Hello there, I'm Intrepid.
And I'm Chad.
This is our review conclusion-y thingy of Star Trek Bridge Crew in VR.
This warbird does not want to go out.
Oh!
One phase of it.
Whoa!
Oh, and it's...
Holy crapo!
Crapo! What's crapo? Oh, I love you, Gray.
This is Canadian swearing. Oh, bugger.
Oh, crapo, that's going to keep me going for days.
Oh, crap. Oh, breathe.
Just fire torpedoes, Chad, just fire torpedoes.
Roger.
Alright,
Don't worry.
helm.
So we've been playing Bridge Crew for about 5 weeks now in co-op with a couple of friends joining us here and there. So we're going to dive straight into what our thoughts are on the game. So we've got a few points we're going to talk about. We're going to start by talking about the gameplay itself. So to begin with, the gameplay is made up of a few roles. Chad, do you want to jump in there with the roles?
The roles are helmsman, tactical, engineering, and of course the captain.
And we haven't all played all of the roles during our experience of the game, but we've played a little bit of everything. I've played 2. Chad's played. I think you played 2 as well, didn't you? Or did you only stick to 1?
Yeah, I tried. I really liked the helmsman and I really liked tactical, but only in our multiplayer sessions I ever did tactical. But then again, I'm not much of an alter, so.
And I mostly did the captain until the last couple of sessions when I switched over to engineering. So I can only speak for those 2 roles, but they felt completely different in a really good way. That if I was to play the game through from start to finish in both of those roles, it would feel like a significantly different game in both of those roles. So I think that's a definite positive. I don't know about your opinion on that.
And I tried engineering once, I think, and engineering felt really complicated, as in really difficult.
Oh, you see, I felt that it's interesting you say it, because I felt sort of the opposite. I felt like engineering doesn't have a lot to do a lot of the time. I know what you mean, though. It can get really intense for short bursts, but a lot of the time it feels like you're not doing a lot. Whereas with Captain, it always feels like you are monitoring. You don't do anything directly, but you're monitoring what everyone else is doing and trying to keep the team cohesive.
Yeah, and
so I really liked how different both of the roles felt.
And in the 3 first sessions that you essentially had to do engineering on top of the captain role.
Yeah, and that's actually another really good point I was going to bring up for the gameplay, is that I don't think, it doesn't feel like to me that multiplayer is optional in this game. I feel like if you're playing this on your own, it's a really rough experience.
It really isn't, because, I mean, what could you do as the engineer? Maybe 10% of the full capacity of the engineers, you could go tell them to repair something, but you couldn't assign a certain amount of engineers. You couldn't lower our signature. Because, you remember, you can hear me in the episodes probably complaining about that our signature is really large, because you couldn't reduce them down to. You could only allocate power to something.
And there was no real. I don't think you could reroute power if you were the captain and the engineer was an AI. And you saw it's not in any of our gameplay footage, but there's one episode where we tried flipping around the roles, and Gray. We went one episode without a helmsman, and trying to get the AI to do the helmsman was an absolute disaster.
Did we blow up in 5 minutes?
Yeah, it was an absolute nightmare. So I can get that. You can't always get 4 people together to play, especially if you want to do it all in VR, like in our case. We didn't have anybody playing in flat screen mode. We're all using, 3 of us using Vives and 1 of us using a Rift. But I think it's definitely not the kind of game, I think, where you can just play with the AI or jump in it and play on your own. It doesn't feel like multiplayer is particularly optional. But I think if you're buying this kind of game, you probably know that. You probably should have good awareness that it's not necessarily going to be a game you can get through on your own.
I know why I bought it.
Go on, why did you buy it?
Well, mainly for the multiplayer, to be able to point at people, and The thing is, do you ever see yourself playing this in single player? Because I don't.
And I said the same to Gray. I was speaking to Gray about it, and he said he'd owned the game for a while. In fact, I think he got it with his Vive when he bought it. When I got my Vive, it was Fallout 4. But when he got it, it was Bridge Crew, and he hadn't touched it. He'd had it since he got the Vive, which was a while ago, but he'd never touched it until we suggested a multiplayer round of it. So yeah, that's probably a negative side of the gameplay, but at the same time, it really shines in that multiplayer aspect of when there are 4 of you online, you're all playing it together. It is incredibly fun.
Yeah, and not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, the game mechanics are pretty fun. They're all right, you know. But you mainly do it. It it gets fun like other games get, that you can mess around.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at it, I don't know how it looks from our footage or from an outsider's point of view, but the game doesn't look very complicated. And I'm watching you shooting when I'm watching some of the footage back, and it looks like you're just sitting there pressing one button over and over again, which, to be fair, you probably are. But
yeah, but it is.
But when you're sitting there in the heat of the moment and everything's going on, and you're only responsible for one little small part of the ship, but you've got to work together so that cohesion as a team comes together. And if you're not all doing it, you're all going to fail together. And I think, despite how simple the gameplay can look and how simple the gameplay can be, I think the complexity of you having your own niche and have to rely on everybody else doing their roles together is what gives the game its complexity.
And especially with the system intrusion too. But
that was just annoying because you're always in the goddamn system intrusion. I could never use it.
Because you didn't play Engineers until the last 3 attempts at recording, and so I was always in the system intrusion. But you do notice that if you take that over, it allows me to focus a bit more. But then again, as in essence, it is pretty simple that I sit there and I hit the fire button until the battery is empty, and that's where it stops.
Yeah, I suppose.
Well, I played Helmsman for a little bit in the trials, or in the what's it called, the tutorials. That seemed, my role was not particularly exciting, especially at sometimes. I just sit around, look around. But the helmsman literally sits there with his D-pad and tries to steer the ship.
You're literally trying to fly this super duper sci-fi spaceship using a little D-pad. I never had a go on helmsman. All I know is that Gray crashed a hell of a lot, but I don't know how hard it actually is.
Literally, the only thing you do as a pilot is the only reason why there's objects in space, is to give the pilot something to do.
What do you think about the versatility of the missions? Not talking about the ongoing missions, but about the actual storyline aspect. Did you think each mission felt varied and interesting?
Yeah, because they tried to put the aspects of Star Trek as much as in there as possible. Diplomacy, helping each other out, scanning, and then of course glorious combat.
Yeah, we know you like your glorious combat. Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job. I think each mission had a distinctly different feel to it. I mean, sure, there was times in each mission where there might be 2 missions where there's some overlap of transporting some guys off some failing ship or some failing asteroid or whatever. But I think each mission did have its own kind of inclusive story and inclusive feel to it. So I think they did a good job in that. It's just a shame there wasn't more of it, I feel like. But I think we're going to touch on... I've got replayability down as a separate section, so we'll talk about that.
I mean, the Federation is more for only combat. The thing is, it wasn't particularly sophisticated. You sit there, scan for life signs, wait for the transporter, get closer. It wasn't sophisticated, but then again, should it be? I mean, in a nice advanced version of of a game like that, you would have several choices in diplomacy. But then again, this is only the start, and I don't think the developers intended to make a full game. More as like, look, this is what VR can do.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a sense of linearity to it in that you don't have any real choice of what you do. There's a few sections where it might say, go and do this, or it's optional. You don't have to go and save this group. You could leave them for X or Y and use them as a distraction. But overall, like you say, there's no elements of diplomacy or anything like that. It's very much the game gives you an objective. You try and complete that objective without getting your ship blown up or without something bad happening.
Yeah, there's no RPG elements whatsoever.
Yeah, which it's not billed as an RPG in any way, but if the game was to move forward or talking about a potential sequel maybe, then those are aspects that they could look into. It's almost like I suppose sort of a Mass Effect style chat system where you could choose dialogue between you and the character you're talking to.
Yeah. But, you know...
Because it's already got like a wheel for controlling the AI, a wheel for dialogue could be something they could add.
Well, I wouldn't know. You know, I've never been captain before. Not that I wanted to be.
Oh, I did offer you to be captain.
Yeah, I know, but too much responsibility. Too much responsibility. I just like shooting stuff.
So, moving on to sound. Let's have a quick discussion about the sound in the game. What did you think about the sound quality, or the particular sound effects, or the music, or was there anything that struck home? Did it feel Star Trek-y to you?
I mean, I'm not much of an... you know, this was more appealing to the first Star Trek original series. I mean, I've only seen clips and bits of it. I started entering Star Trek stuff at Voyager and Deep Space Nine and that sort of thing. But it felt like Star Trek. It did feel like Star Trek.
For me, the biggest sound, and it's for them from a developer's point of view, it's probably the simplest thing in the world to implement. But from a gameplay point of view, when you're playing the game and you hear the phasers and you hear that torpedo, every time that torpedo shots, you get a little bit of a geekgasm rolling down your spine. It was just it's the sounds they're just lifted straight out of the series or wherever else. And they sound different depending on the ship you're using. If you're using the Aegis or whether you're using the original Enterprise, they both had the sounds that were authentic for that kind of time period.
Straight from
but it
the
was
series.
Just that it was that kind of what's what I'm looking for. It's kind of the recognition. It's something familiar to you, and it's like that's that sound. I know that sound, and it brings you that kind of one step closer to the immersion of that universe because you know what it is.
And Red Alert, the Red Alert sound.
Oh yeah, the Red Alerts. Yeah, hell yeah. You press it. You gotta love the Red Alert button. You press it even for the fun of it. It just sounds great. I don't know. Credit the developers and obviously the original people that made the show for those sounds, but from a game point of view, it came across really well. I think. I don't know how the game was in terms of music. I'll admit that I had the game sound turned down quite a lot, so I could focus on A, what I was doing, and B, what everyone else was saying. But I can't really comment much on the music. Did you have the music on?
Not necessarily the music, but I definitely had the effects on. I mean, the effects were, beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, the voice acting was decent. I'm not sure if there's nothing that stood out, but there's nothing that I'd say I picked out and said,
no, but
that voice acting's absolutely terrible. Like, it's completely cardboard. So I don't think I wouldn't say that was a strength or a weakness of the game. It was nothing. Either way, it was just a thing that was there. It was mostly the character speaking.
Yeah, it was good. It
I
wasn't...
mean, it's only at the same time VR is still in its relative infancy. The lip syncing to the speech wasn't amazing, but at the same time, it's probably about what you can expect at this current tech level.
Exactly, and it's a small audience. Not everybody can buy a 700, 800 euro virtual reality solution.
Well, don't forget that one of the pluses of this game is that the game is available on quite a lot of different platforms. It is available on the Rift, and I believe it's available on PSVR as well.
It is available on PS4.
So, yeah, the cost is significantly less for those people not using the Vive.
And something we also have to take into account, that this is already a game from, I think it's almost 2 years ago now. No.
I don't know when it was released. I only bought it myself fairly recently, so I don't know when the actual release was.
Let's see. I wrote it down here somewhere.
Chad with his notes.
But, I mean, there's been a lot of innovation since then already.
Well, technologically, I don't know. With obviously got the Vive Pro coming out, but I don't know how much things have changed. I'll admit I don't look at the tech side of it particularly a great deal.
Oh.
Should we talk about? I don't know how much there is to talk about, but do you want to talk about the graphics for a bit?
Yeah, well, the graphics. I mean, on the Vive, of course, you see something else because you always have to deal with the fact that you're essentially looking at a 6 or 7 inch screen that is zoomed in on by 2 lenses. But the graphics were good. I mean, the consoles were convincing. The one in the Aegis was easy.
Yeah, what he's talking about, you don't see it in any of our footage. You might see it in some of our footage, actually. I'm not sure if we've included it or not. Is the Aegis, or the Aegis, however you want to pronounce it, the ship that's most like the Enterprise, I suppose. is much more high tech. Everything's explained, everything's clear, everything's visual. But if you're doing it ongoing missions, that is not the story, the optional ongoing missions, you can choose, if you're experienced enough, to try the original Enterprise, where things aren't labelled and everything is just a set of LEDs that you have to press. Or if you're the captain and you want the map, you have to pick up a little iPad, a very chunky iPad, that will show you where things are. So it's very authentic and it has a great feel to it, but it's very difficult, and the recommendation of being an experienced crew definitely comes through.
But you do have to overlay at some point, but it's still getting...
You do have to overlay at some point, yeah.
Literally nothing is labelled.
Graphically, I think it's going to be a complaint for some people, I imagine. I mean, we understand it is a seated game. It's not a room-scale VR game. But it is limited in the fact that you are sitting down. You can't walk around. You can't move your character.
No.
All you move are two little arms. And when you spin your... As we've seen in some of the footage, when you spin your torso... Because when you're in the Enterprise, the old Enterprise, that is the original Enterprise, you're facing the wrong way if you're on the engineering console. And if you turn around, the game doesn't know you've turned around. So your arms bend backwards hideously. It hasn't been thought through that maybe the player might want to turn to face the other players. So there is definitely some VR graphic glitches and madness involved with that. So it's a little bit disappointing that you can't move around, because it would be nice to explore and to see the different consoles and see the different areas. Maybe stand over Chad's shoulder and slap him in the head when he's shooting torpedoes at anomalies.
Yeah, for example.
But at the same time, from the way the game's designed, it's very clear that that's the way the game is supposed to be.
And for example, I mean, why not walk around? Why not add a teleport feature where you can, teleport, and if I do something bad, you have to take me to the brig, and I have to be put in the brig, and you can take over my station, for example.
Yeah, that's a bit beyond the remit of the game, though.
Yeah, I don't think this was the intention. I mean, maybe the developers, try to gauge intention with this and see if this was worth it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't think Ubisoft have made it as a prototype, and obviously they've had the license to do the game, whatever else. And the price point is definitely that of a full game, not of a prototype or a proof of concept. But if they were to make another one, there were definitely areas I think there could be some improvement made.
They will
graphically, I think. I mean, the authenticity of the ships, looking through the view screen, the view screen itself, and looking out at the nebula and the universes and whatever else as you fly through them and look at them, it's all beautiful. It's all great to look at, and it's all very immersive as you're flying through it. But then something like a fire happens in the cockpit, and the fire doesn't look very good. It looks very pixelated. It looks very chunky. It doesn't look like fire. And I know that's probably a hard thing to replicate and design and make look good in VR particularly. But there's definitely a break in the immersion when you're looking at the fire. It just looks like a little glowy campfire in the corner rather than, holy moly, the ship's on fire, we're all going to die. So there's definitely, I think, some good points and bad points in the graphics. There's some things that just look spot on and look perfect. And there's other things that just stand out and kind of break your immersion a little bit.
Yeah, and the ship doesn't really, suffer battle damage. You can see your hull damage go down, and there's a little bit of fire, and then 2 crewmates die, but there's no holes in your ship that are filled up with force fields. I really did like, when you double tap the left D-pad on the right side, and you go on top of the ship, and then you...
the external view.
Yeah, and then you look at the anomalies. That was really pretty.
Yeah, some of the actual elements of space are absolutely breathtaking, and it really takes you away into that faraway universe and whatever else. It's very kind of breathtaking in some ways. Right, let's have a chat about replayability. So for those that haven't played it or are thinking about getting it or whatever else, the game is split into 2 sections. You have a series of campaign missions, I think there's 6 of them, if memory serves. There's 6 and a challenge, I think. And then there is something called the ongoing missions. Now, I think I can't speak for developer intent. I can only say what I think they intended, or what I think it should have been, or it was designed to be. Is that you've got these 6 storyline missions that are all really well drafted. They give you a really good sense of what the game is and what the roles are and how they all come together to form this capable crew that can do these amazing feats and things in space. And they feel really well designed. It's a real big shame there isn't more of them. And they do get escalatingly more challenging. There was one mission where we really struggled, right?
Yeah, there was. I think it was mission 4.
It was 4. I think it was 4 or 5.
Yeah.
There's one mission where you start damaged, but without going too much into spoiler territory or anything, there's one mission where you start damaged, and we had a really tough time with it. There must have been 6 or 7 attempts, I think, until we actually completed that one.
That cost us 1.5 session at least, and I think
it was a good 3 hours on one mission, I think.
And during a session we play about 2 hours, 2.5.
Mm-hmm. Now that's great. I've got no complaints about that at all. Well, other than the one, I wish there was more of it. And the reason I wish there was more of it is because the ongoing missions is where I think the game really falls down. And it's an absolute shame, because the game would have so much more replayability and so much longer of a lifespan if just a little bit more thought was put into how the ongoing missions work. So what my expectation was of the ongoing missions when we first started it was that you would be put into the ship, a random mission would be generated, and you'd be sent on a mission. And when that mission completes, the game will generate another one. And eventually your ships can get worn down, you can run out of torpedoes, maybe you get a chance to reload your torpedoes if you do so many missions in a row successfully. And I thought it was just going to be an escalating thing where it gets more and more difficult until eventually your crew buckles under the pressure of having to do so many missions in a row and keep the ship running. Unfortunately, it seemed like it was sort of randomly generated from a small set of data. So we will send you to any one of the 15 systems. We'll send you to one of the 15 systems. When you get there, your mission will either be to kill X, kill Y, or transport X or transport Y. And it felt like the ongoing missions, and the thing is, it's not even like it carries on. It's not transport X, transport Y, then go and do this, then go and do this. It's go here, transport this person, come back, and it goes back to the briefing room, and that's the end of the ongoing mission. It didn't feel very ongoing in the slightest, and I feel like that, for me, is what doesn't just... This game was... I had so much fun playing it in so many different ways, and playing it with the 3 of you guys was immensely fun. But I think without the ongoing missions, the game just doesn't have the replayability that it should have for the price point that it's aimed at.
No. It's difficult to say, honestly, because it's not like I didn't enjoy the game, but it could be so much more.
Completely. I can't say for a second. There is no point during this review I'll say I didn't enjoy the game, because it's just not true. I enjoyed every minute I had playing it. It was great fun, but I just feel like that fun had to end because it ran out of content when it's got this section that seems to be billed for having more content and more stuff to do. And it was a real letdown to finishing the 6 missions. We're like, yeah, we've finished the 6 missions, now we can go and play the ongoing missions and see how long we can last or see how well we can do. But the content just wasn't there, it just felt really flat. And so for me, that was probably the biggest... There's 2 negatives you'll hear about this game, I think, and for me, that's one of the 2 big negatives, the big thumbs down for me, is that the ongoing missions felt really disappointing after finishing the main campaign.
Yeah, they honestly, they did. I mean, there's a beautiful ranking up system in there. I was looking forward to going through the ranks, but I mean, I'm not gonna make it to the end rank. I know that for sure, because there's not enough content to play this a lot more. I mean, even last session at the end, you could already feel like, oh well, we've already done this a couple of times before. For
sure, yeah. Do you know, last session, it got to the point where we were not drawing it out necessarily, but we knew there wasn't another session to be had. That the game had reached a conclusion. I mean, I'm just looking at my Steam library, just quickly tabbed out for a sec while recording.
Me too.
I've got 10 hours of playtime on this. I didn't play it before we started recording. I maybe did 20 minutes on the tutorial or whatever else just to get the grips of it. But those 10 hours have all been spent playing with Chad and Gray and Holgard through the campaign. Now, we redid a few of the story missions, because when we swapped captains or we swapped roles, we might have done some missions multiple times in different positions. But that 10 hours is probably all the gameplay the game has, for me anyway. I don't think I will revisit it unless there's a patch for the ongoing missions or some new missions added. But for a game experience, for that money that I paid, that's what my gameplay value is right now. Is that it's a 10-hour game for X amount of money, in my opinion.
Yeah, because we bought it at half price.
Yeah, sure.
But, I mean, there's no doubt people out there who've bought it for full price, which is €40. And what do we expect for €40? How many... I always think there needs to be a set number to this, but then again, you know, I've got games in my library that I've played for 800 hours, and there's games who I've put in 3, which are the same price.
And we've all been there. We've all bought a game for €40 or £40 or whatever, and it's only had 6 hours of storyline, and then you're done. The only way I think this game would have more gameplay for me is trying the different roles. I said I wouldn't revisit it after 10 hours. Again, thinking about it, I maybe would revisit it for another hour or two, just so I could try out the helmsman, just so I could try out tactical. But even that would just be, I know the mission, I know what's going to happen, the surprise is gone. The ongoing missions feel empty and void of life, really. So I don't think there's probably much more than an hour or two, maybe trying out the different roles. I think if I played with different players or got a whole different set of crew, I still don't think that gameplay's there. So I think the replayability factor is a real kick in the teeth for this game. And it's a criticism of this game, but to be fair, it's a criticism of a lot of VR games.
It is the
a
main
lot of VR
issue
games
in
don't
VR.
have a lot of replayability. But then the reason I wouldn't criticise a lot of other VR games for replayability, because a lot of other VR games don't have this price point, and that's the real killer, I think.
Yeah.
Should we jump into controls?
Yeah, sure. Let's.
Not much to say about controls, but I'll jump in anyway. Right, so let's talk about the controls for a minute. I have one thing to say straight away about the controls, because it bugged me no end. It's only in one section of one mission, I think. There was one section of one mission where the ship is constantly getting hit in like a storm or something. You're in something negative, and it's constantly barraging your ship for minor, small amounts of damage. But every time it happens, the controllers vibrate, and it drove me mad. I don't know if you felt it in tactical, or whether it was a captain or an engineering thing. But every time the ship got an electrical surge, the controllers vibrated, and it was like. Well, I won't say what it was. I won't say what it was like holding, but it was very frustrating after 20 minutes of playing the game, and your hands are vibrating for that long.
Yeah, you know that everybody just got it anyway, right?
Yeah, sure.
No, I don't think I had that. I think I would have remembered, but then again,
I don't know what role it was, and it just really stuck in my head. Because for the most part, I mean, I can only speak for the Vive, I suppose, but the game feels pretty intuitive. Your hands move as the controllers move. They're tracked pretty well.
Yeah.
My only complaint at any point, really, apart from the vibrating nonsense, was when you're sitting in the engineering. I mean, I'll put my hands up here and say, okay, I am sure I do have T-Rex arms as well. But when I was on engineering, it felt like the transporter and the... What's the thing? Tactical scanning, whatever it's called.
Oh, the system intrusion.
The system intrusion. It felt like they were too far away. I always had to lean in my chair slightly to reach those particular buttons, because they were just a little bit too uncomfortably far. So that was a bit frustrating. But I mean, the Vive controllers are fine. You can point your finger, you can slightly tweak one finger, but you don't really need to. You can get by fine. It's all just pointing your hand in one direction and pressing the trigger, really. There's only really one button, I suppose, that you ever use, isn't there?
Essentially, I mean, I also noticed that the controllers, you're limited to a certain box, and if you go too close to the table, they didn't want you to clip through the table, so they bounce off. And sometimes I noticed that I'd lower my arms, put them in my armrests in my chair, but they would lean way up. And then when I needed to do some action, I would move around, and I would struggle to retain control over my arms for a second.
I know exactly what you mean. I didn't encounter it at all in the Aegis, When I was playing the captain and the engineer, no problem. But as soon as we went into the old Enterprise, I don't know if it's because it's the engineer and the way the console was, but obviously it wants to make it so your hands don't go where they shouldn't be or in a weird position. So when you put your hands below where the table is in the game, your hands don't go lower in game than where the table is, but your hands in real life might be lower. So when you bring them back up again, it takes a while for the game to re-clip and put your hands back to where your real life hands are. I don't know if I've explained that very well, but I know exactly what you mean, Chad.
Yeah.
That your hands are glued to the table sometimes, and it gets really awkward. But overall, I mean, the controls are great. They're intuitive. I don't really have any complaints apart from that one force feedback minor issue.
I never fired the phasers accidentally. I never released a photon torpedo accidentally.
Come off it! You fat fingered it loads. You said yourself.
No, I did that on purpose.
Sure.
I mean, that was me just temporarily twisting the truth to not get sent back to the academy.
So, let's have some closing thoughts. Closing thoughts for me, or from us, I suppose. Negative. No, we'll do good, bad, good. We'll do two good and a bad. So I think, straight up, it's fun. There's no arguing about it. There's no way me and Chad are going to say at any point we didn't have fun playing this game. I mean, to be fair, when me and Chad game together, we know each other well. We have fun anyway. But the game itself was fun. And I don't think we can dispute that or say at any point we didn't enjoy it.
It wasn't boring. I mean, it
wasn't boring. What an endorsement! Put that on the cover art right there. It wasn't boring.
Okay,
Chad.
maybe that came out a little bit wrong. It was good.
It was.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I mean, I've got no complaints.
I enjoyed playing it.
The negative for me is the cost. I mean, I know we got it at half price, and I still don't think it's really tough to say. Something like I didn't get the value for money. I don't know how.
I do agree with you with this one. €25 was still too much for the experience we had. I'll be nasty and I'll say it.
I don't know. I can live with it. I couldn't live with the full price.
No.
If I'd have paid full price for that, I'd be disappointed. I would feel like I have not had the gameplay that I paid for. I think maybe at 50%, you can just about justify it. I think. I know you disagree, and you just said so, but I think at the 50% price point, I think that's just about tolerable.
If I had to put a price tag on this game, it would be €15 to €20.
And I think that's probably fairer.
Yeah.
There's no way it's worth the full value, though. Sorry, Ubisoft.
But
the content's just not there.
I think in a sense we're paying for the fact that not everybody's going to buy this because there aren't enough Vive users out there, or common VR users out there. But they did make it possible for 2D. But then again, buying this as a 2D person, is this is 50% of the fun of this game is that
you're playing it in virtual reality. I can't imagine it plays well on 2D, but I can't say I haven't tried it either, so I don't know.
No, I haven't tried that either, so I won't make any judgments on that.
There's also a disclaimer of this is made by a large company. It's not made by a small developer.
No,
and it does have a license attached to it.
Yeah.
We should add a disclaimer, or at least I should add a disclaimer at this point. Is I don't have a basis for comparison. I haven't played Artemis, which is only the game out there that's similar, I believe. And I could be really being naive here and missing out something that's really painstakingly obvious that I'll kick myself for later. But I haven't played the competition, so I don't know. This game could be drastically flawed compared to the competition. I just don't know.
No.
I'm only judging it on its own merits. Let's finish on a good point. It's cooperative. We wanted to play a cooperative game. All our games that we're going to try and play on this channel will be cooperative, and I think it's cooperative through and through, and it's fantastic for that. I wish more games were cooperative, and this definitely felt like that from start to finish. It felt like I was working with other people, and it didn't feel like I was at any point glory hogging or doing everything or stealing the limelight. It felt like everybody had a purpose. And it sounds really cliche and a bit touchy-feely, but we all came together, and that sounds really wrong, never mind, scratch that. We all worked together really well.
You got to leave that in.
We made the ship do stuff, and it was great. It was a great cooperative experience.
We made the ship do stuff, and the end. That's it. Perfect. 10 out of 10. Wait.
10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Play again. Me and Chad might disagree here. I'm not gonna. In our reviews, I don't want to include a score rating. Chad might persuade me otherwise, but I feel like games should be just talked about and discussed, not given arbitrary numbers.
Yeah, the thing is, you always have to take the number with a bit of a grain of salt.
Nah, games shouldn't be judged on numbers. I think it, or any kind of qualifier. I think a game should just be discussed for its merits. But never mind, that's a discussion for another day. Thanks for watching our first VR co-op series. If you like what you've seen, drop us a like or a sub. If there's a particular game you want to see, or if you have any feedback, or if you just want to talk to us about your day, then please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching. I'm Intrepid.
And this is Chad.
Bye bye.
And if you want me to shoot something, just tell me.